Which brings us to our very first segment of Adventuring Academy. Get ready for Contested Roll. Contested Roll is the segment of the show where you voice a hot take in TTRPG, guaranteed to start some fiery discourse and get those engagement numbers up through the roof. People comment all over the TikTok. Okay. I gotta stop saying why we do this segment.
For engagement purposes.
Engagement! We're nasty!
We gotta get those numbers up.
Get those numbers up.
Okay.
Whatever position you stake out, I will stake out the opposite. We have some example ones if you want.
I heard the metal dice versus plastic or digital versus real.
Real. You got like table theater of the mind versus battle mat. Do you have a strong tabletop conviction that you feel in your heart? Is there something that you feel very, very impassioned about and that you want me to momentarily not believe in?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what is the opinion I want you to have that is...
The opposite? How do we get me in hot fucking water on this show?
I think it's good. I think cosplay is good.
Yeah. Great.
I'm gonna say, I think having, I do like entering... There are different types of scenes and different types of things where shit is like open-ended or not open-ended. I really like to know exactly what to do. I think when someone's like, we're being railroaded or whatever, I'm usually like, fine, let's just go straight down that roller coaster.
I think this actually fucking rules. Wait, so elaborate on this for me. What is if we're doing railroad versus sandbox, what is the benefit of railroad to you? What is it you love about railroad?
Benefit of railroading. As a DM, I don't have to think of that much shit. Quality of life. Quality of life.
The only real man out there, the only person actually saying it how it fucking is. I don't got fucking time for this.
I come from a narrative writing background of I written for TV shows and things where you write the thing and that's the thing that happens. You don't write a bunch of possibilities and then
and throw most of them out.
I think, you just have to prepare so much as a DM. So as a DM, I don't care. You're doing this thing. Maybe that's like a slightly stronger stance than I have, and maybe people benefit from a little bit of choice. But otherwise, I mostly believe that they will have fun if they do the thing that I set out for them to do.
I think it's so brave of you to say that players don't deserve agency or choices. And I think it's actually incredible of you to get out here and stake a position that people should get in the fucking minecart and go down the rails to the little gem room.
I'm sorry, did what you described sound unfun?
Being in a minecart, rolling down the... Woo! I'll tell you what's more fun than a roller coaster.
What?
A box of sand. Sandbox play invites the players into a rich, engaging, multifaceted world where they are not pinned down to a prefabricated plot. They are not mere passengers on the voyage of their dungeon master's fancy. They are at cause and in the driver's seat of the adventure that is unfolding.
And hopefully they have the agency to find that minecart that was already there and go down it, or something as good as that, which... I'm starting to believe if you're creating this big sandbox, might not exist.
If you're putting all this effort into getting sand, maybe there's not a fun mine. With a sandbox approach, what happens is the players get to avail themselves of the deep motivations of their characters, and they get to engage in the world with all of the feeling of depth and intricacy that this is a real fantastical setting that they can move through. And rather than having to be led by the nose like a child that we're constantly in this day and age seeing grabbed by the nose and led around, that they instead are able to design adventures based on their own characters' wants, needs, and motivations.
There's 2 jumps on the rail. Hey, sometimes people are children and they need to be told what to do.
They need to be
because
told.
it's good for them. And they don't know it yet, but it's going to be good for them.
Real talk, I actually love this because I think that what this comes down to is I have seen like true sandbox worlds. I'm trying to think how to put this. Thinking of games that are like sandbox games, I often think of like what is it like big open world like or GTA or something like that.
GTA,
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, where it's like there's a linear adventure, so to speak, but like you can spend your entire time playing that game not really doing that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes about going around in this big open worlds, and there's an incredible feeling of freedom when you first do it, and you're like, oh my God, I'm just running through the woods. I'm literally not even supposed to be here right now. I'm in the woods. There's no story event. I'm in the woods. And you do that, and then it's like, oh shit, how do I get back to town?
Yeah. The thing that happens with me in these open world video games is I'm like, wow, I can do anything. God, I guess I'll kind of wander over here a little bit and see if, well, maybe I go back. And then I realize, oh, I played 2 hours and I didn't do anything at all.
I did nothing. Well, you know what's really interesting is so there's an interesting struggle here, right? And it depends on what you mean, because I think that people with railroading, often what has happened is there's a negative experience that defines that for them, where it's literally like, it's like you're in a dungeon and there's a puzzle on the door and a person's like, is there a keyhole? And the GM will be like, yes, there's a keyhole. And you see it's locked, but the puzzle undoes the lock. And the person's like, I looked through the keyhole and I misty stepped through the door. And they watch a dungeon master go, yeah, you can't. It's anti-magic. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And they go, what? In other words, like the types of railroading that are the most noxious are not even recognizing what challenges are and what they mean, and not letting players be creative in any way outside of these very narrowly prescribed ways.
And that's not what I mean. I definitely would like, in my version of that, it's like, I just don't want you to miss the puzzle.
Yes.
But how you solve that, great. Whatever you decide makes sense.
You teleport past it, you do something else. I remember one time in my long home game, there was something where, like, I would often say, I had one player that was Maisie Veselak who would figure out instantaneous ways to solve any puzzle that I had. And then my brother Griffin would always be the one that was even one step beyond that of being like, this puzzle is irrelevant as we already have what we needed to obtain at the back of the dungeon, which is this. And I'd be like, no, like it's done. You already have it. But it was so interesting. So like, we know that there's really negative railroading where it's like, you can go north, east, west, or south. Like we go west. There's the path to the west is blocked. Like that sucks. Don't even present that choice in that case.
Yeah.
The shadow side of Sandbox is, I think, putting people in a world like, and I have been guilty of this from time to time, especially in like home games, of being like, here you are in the magical land of so-and-so. The villains are various authoritarian bureaucrats that move in the shadows, and this is here, and you're an adventurer in this thing, but the institutions that you're facing are so vast at this, and you have this here, and there is no one's been chosen by destiny. There is no chosen one. Luke Skywalker's dad never shows up. You're just a guy with a sword in a port town. Think of how real this is. And then the person goes like, wow, we've really recreated kind of the feeling of powerlessness and this, like, in other words, like, you went for realistic and sadly you nailed it. Like, I do feel at the mercy of the world.
I don't have enough copper to get an ale. I wander around.
My character applies for a job at the docks. Like,
I don't feel empowered.
Yeah, and there is that thing with Sandbox where you get into and I've even said this before, like the goal of these fantasy worlds for me is not just to be in Middle Earth, it's to be in the Fellowship. Yeah. Because the fantasy is not just wizards and dragons, the fantasy is if you throw this piece of jewelry into a volcano, you fix everything. And you go, oh my God, like what a mission. And I always want things that are a little bit more complex than that, because sometimes it's like, if the reward of the story is too easy, I'll feel kind of like, the reward of the story is too easy, then I go like, well, I don't really get to bring this good feeling back to earth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because if it's that linear and straightforward, you don't feel like you can attach other complications of being a person to it or something like that.
For example, when I watch the victory in Lord of the Rings, as fucking incredible as it is, and I go back to my day-to-day life, I go like, what is the one ring in my life? There's not really one. And when I watch a victory, weirdly, even a victory that's a little bit more like, if you look at like the original Star Wars movie, it's still like that, but it's a little bit more like, oh, the bad guys made one huge mistake and we found out about it and they're gonna exploit it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, I guess a weird exhaust port is a little bit more real than we got the ring that has all badness in it.
Right.
But even that, and then you go one past that to like, I don't know if you watched Andor, but like watching that where you go like, oh shit, that is really a lot closer to terra firma, and the victories in that feel kind of more applicable to my like, it's really
hard fought, and it's sort of just, they're all kind of evolving as people, and it's not that black and white.
Yeah. I think about that a lot too with like the different, even in like the campaigns we've played where some of them have had very intense like the problems of the world are like vast and insurmountable. And then ones that are like sophomore year where it's like, you got to get the Crown of the Nightmare King.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that's not really railroading to just give a clear objective. To be like, Crown of the Nightmare King, it's far away. And it's hard to get, but that's your deal. You just gotta go get it.
And it's the foundation of so much, like so many fantasy stories and things like that. But like, yeah, even just the idea of like this thing, knowing 100% sure like that will be good to do that. And a lot of times in these stories, and more complicated fantasy stories or stories for tabletop stuff is like, you're pretty sure that would be good. You know, there might be some complications to that aren't good. You know?
Well, I think that really has to do with your table. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with like, because the funny thing is, I feel like I love a sandbox world. And I would want to play in that. But I understand that there are a lot of players that wouldn't. Like the idea of a sandbox world to me is like, my brother ran a pirate maritime thing that was really it was like the grim kind of tone of like a Game of Thrones, but set in an age of high sail, which is really fun. So it's like bleak and violent and fucked up. And the pirate that I'm playing is essentially someone who is like, has a backstory that's engaging to me, and I like the storyline of this person, but he's like, I'm gonna be the greatest pirate that ever lived. I don't need, so the world being a sandbox is great because my quest is totally internal, and I just need a world to pursue my ambitions in, right?
Yeah.
But I think that if you don't have players that are going to give themselves quests. So like story events would happen and like, oh, we met a noble. And I lean in and I'm like, a noble? And does their family know that they're out here with dangerous pirates? You know, like, oh, I'm gonna, where I go like, I'm gonna capture that noble and ransom them to their family. That's not a plot hook. That's me playing a dangerous, frightening.
He's trying to be the like, for sure the best pirate in the world, or like make a name for himself,
So it's like, and that wasn't the story that my brother had planned. Like, how could it have been, right? Like, how, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's that thing of like, if you're playing with people that are going to throw huge wrenches into the wheels left and right, then Sandbox makes a lot of sense. But I think a lot of people, the fantasy is, I want to come here and save the world. Like, even thinking about the amount of people, I think a lot about like the amount of, like I've played a lot of games and like them to get weird from time to time, but sometimes you're playing with people that are like, no, I've never gotten to be the princess. I've never gotten to be the like brave knight.
The depth that you're looking for in a tabletop game is probably different from some people who are just like, I want the most straightforward experience possible.
Yeah, I've developed a tolerance, and I'm like, I need some weird shit to get me going, get me where I need to go.
I mean, you got to play with a bunch of brand new people and just really upset them.
Be like, let's do this weird stuff. But man, I love that. But I think railroading gets a really bad rap, and it is fucking, even for someone like myself, when a DM goes like, here is a clear objective, and here's what you need to do. It's just so helpful when you're feeling a little bit lost, because you don't want to get to that point where suddenly you're like, well, I guess my character needs to go get a job and find a place to live.
Right.
Like, like we're done.
I'm that lost.
I'm that lost. Well, I guess I'll start a family and live my life out to the end of my days. Like,
I'll see you guys later.
and that's contested role.